Okay.
You know, they can see down in the playlists. Did we do something like that? Remember that we used to go all the times? When did you do theirs?
All right, it's 5:15, so we'll go ahead and get started promptly this evening. This is the June 18, 2024 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals. Zoning present here today are Allison Grass, Robin Richards, John Bennett, Bill Goodman Jr., Chappie McKay, and me, your chair, Jeff Tibbles. Present from the planning staff are Lee Batchelder, Penny Ashby, and Emma McQuarrie. These proceedings are being recorded, and we ask that if you speak, you please identify yourself for the record. We will conduct this meeting in the usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, the matter is uncontested. For the Board of Zoning Appeals usually, but not always, approves uncontested applications. For all applications, the board reserves the right to ask questions of the staff, applicant, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application, or if there is opposition to the application, we treat the matter as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals zoning has the authority to do three things. Number one, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Number two, grant special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. And number three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum is present and qualified to vote. However, an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the board members present and voting shall be required before a use variance may be granted. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. I'm required by the city ordinance to ask you to swear to tell the truth if you intend to speak tonight. So if you do intend to speak, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You'll signify by saying, I do. I do. Thank you. All right, we have no deferrals on this evening's agenda, so we will get straight into it. We've got a pretty lengthy agenda. The first section is A, review of minutes and deferred applications from previously advertised BZA-Z agendas. Number one, review of minutes of the June 4, 2024 meeting. The draft meeting minutes have been circulated to board members in your packet of materials for this meeting. Any questions, or is there a motion?
Move for approval.
All right, Mr. Bennett moves to approve. Ms. Grass seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The ayes have it unanimously. The minutes are approved. The next section in the agenda, B, new applications. Number one, 1-11 Ashley Boulevard, Charlestown, TMS number 457-11-01-039, Council District 8, zoned STR. Requesting the fifth one-year extension of a vested right that expires on June 5th, 2024 pursuant to section 54-962. Vested right is an approved variance under section 54-353 for attached dwelling units, duplexes in an STR, single two-family residential zone district. The owner is Barnes Moultrie Ward LLC. The applicant is Tara Romano A&D. On behalf of Neil Stevenson Architects, Mr. Batchelder.
This request for another 1-year extension of this vested right satisfies all the requirements of the zoning ordinance. We recommend that it be approved. The application was requesting this extension was received before the June 5th expiration. So
Okay, so the application was timely made. There have been no
Yes.
changes in the ordinance that would
Yeah.
now prohibit this extension of the vested rights period.
Right.
Okay, all right. We have any opposition to the application for 1-11 Ashland Boulevard? Being none, do we have the owner applicant? All right, we do have somebody. Okay, anything you'd like to say to the board? No. Anybody want to make a motion on this one? Bennett moves to approve. Mr. McKay seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. The motion passes unanimously and the extension of the vested rights. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda, B2, 257-261 King Street, Peninsula, TMS number 457-08-01-050, Council District 8, Zone GBA. Requesting a third one-year extension of a vested right that expires on July 21, 2024, pursuant to section 54-962. Vested right pertains to a special exception granted under section 54-220 on July 21, 2020 for a 12-unit accommodations use in a GBA general business accommodation zone district. The owner is 247 King Street Partnership. The applicant is Reggie Gibson Architects, Henry J. Lee III. Mr. Batchelder.
this request for a 1-year extension satisfies the requirements of the ordinance and recommended to be approved.
All right. Anybody here in opposition to the application of the vested rights extension for 257-261 King Street? Seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owner or applicant here? Anything you'd like to say to the board?
No.
Do I hear a motion? All right, Mr. McKay moves. Mr. Goodwin seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously. The vested rights extension for 257-261 King Street is granted. Thank you, sir. All right, the next item on our agenda, B3, 2 Lauren Court, Shadow Moss, TMS number 358-06-00-082, Council District 10, Zone SR1, requesting a variance after the fact from section 54-301 to allow an 8-foot fence height along the northeast side property line on this property. The height limit is 6 feet. The owner applicant is Christine Compo. Mr. Batchelder.
This is a residential property in Shadow Moss. Zoning map shows it located here, Lauren Court. So Lauren Court is this little cul-de-sac right here, and the property fronts on that. But the fence that exceeds the 6-foot height limit is over on this side of the property, adjacent to the neighboring property at 40 Shadow Moss Parkway. And this is an aerial view of the property. There are a few other fences that I can see in the area. Of course, this property right next door has one, and the neighbor over here has a fence. And so what happened is the fence was constructed. There had not been a permit issued by the city, so this is treated as an after the fact request and this just illustrates the section of the fence that is, that exceeds 8 feet in height. They did submit an application for that. But here are photographs taken from inside the yard. So this is the side of the property that's adjacent to that 40 Shadow Moss Parkway property. And so you see at the front along Shadow Moss Parkway, the fence steps down to 6 feet in height, but then steps up to 8 feet in height along this property line. Then continues along that same side property line and then transitions back to a 6-foot fence, I guess, on the back, on the other property adjoining the property. So it's this side of the fence that exceeds 6 feet in height. Another photograph. And taken from the street, this is what it looks like. And so you see the taller fence over here and the neighboring property right here. So the application was submitted and I think that my recommendations are based on what I would have said had somebody come in and asked me about this before they had ever constructed it. And so I don't see any other fences in this area of Shadow Moss that exceed 6 feet in height. And so to have a fence that would exceed that height limit would be unusual. And the applicant does cite some issues that they feel like they have that justify their taller fence. You know, some of those things could probably be addressed with landscaping, but anyway, so my recommendation is for denial of this, just simply because I don't see where there's truly a showing that the variance test has been met. And I've communicated that with the applicant, and they've indicated that the neighbor over on this side has a fence along this property line that exceeds 6 feet in height. And I'm not familiar with that, but one of my staff people apparently did go out there and inspect that fence, and they had built the fence apparently without a permit from the city, so they had to come in and get a permit. And they did obtain a permit, and it was my staff person's understanding from the conversation that he had with the owner of 40 Shadow Moss that the fence, the section of the fence that exceeded 6 feet in height would be reduced to 6 feet. So if that has not been done, then he'll be following up with that neighbor about that. But for this fence, you know, again, I'm just not really seeing where there's a argument for a variance in this case. So my recommendation is based on that.
All right, thank you, Lee. Is there anybody here in opposition to the application for 2 Lorne Court? If you're here in opposition. All right, nobody's here in opposition. Do we have the owner, applicant? Yes, ma'am. Anything you'd like to say to the board?
I just wasn't aware.
Come on up, please. Come on up and stand at the podium.
Oh.
Give us your comments and your reasons why there's a hardship here.
Hurricane Ian is what took the fence down originally. I didn't plan to put in a new fence or anything like that. So basically when the contractor came, he asked me how do I want my fence? I had no idea that there was an ordinance. I said I would like it a little bit higher because that neighbor happens to work in their garage with all night long till the morning. And also at night, they have a spotlight that every time a car goes by, it shines right in my backyard. And it's really bright. So that's what I wrote in the situation. But in the meantime, and this was over a year and a half ago, have been no complaints. So I believe what happened is this neighbor to the right of me actually wants the higher fence. He, on the other side of his house, has put a higher fence.
Oh.
And I have a picture of it. So he ended up having to get a permit, and I don't know what's happened with it. He told me that it's approved for 6 months. He's not doing anything with it. But on the right side of his house, the fence is higher. So mistake on me for not knowing about the permit, the ordinance. I wish my contractor would have told me because I spent thousands of dollars and then I stained it myself. So anyway, it's a hardship because now I'll have to pay to reduce it. And when the only neighbor that it's affecting is the neighbor that wants it higher, he's got the RV, he's got a bunch of stuff that he keeps in his backyard. That's why he's got security cameras and the motion sensor lights and everything. So he wants it that way. And it goes on to the back of him. Apparently they had a roof. And I think that's how the city ended up coming out, is the neighbor right behind him. So this fence has been up for a year and a half. I never had an issue. So I don't know if I get a chainsaw out. I don't know, but it was an innocent.
I understand. All right, anybody have any questions for the owner while she's here? All right, we'll bring you back and if we've got any questions. All right, any discussion, any questions for Lee?
I don't think there have been any objections voiced by anybody in the neighborhood. That is one thing though.
How did this come to the city's attention?
I think an inspector in a different department went out there and noticed that the fence on the neighboring property had been constructed and notified our staff person about that, and it was taller than 6 feet. And so that is what prompted him to go out and then he saw the fence on this property.
Okay.
Going forward, he went out.
Gotcha. All right, so Ms. Campo, we are bound to follow a city ordinance that requires that any variance requested meet the 4 elements of the hardship test set forth in the ordinance. And even though I personally do not like to be the fence height police, we are bound by the ordinance and bound by what the variance standards are, and we have a duty to adhere to those provisions in that city ordinance. And even if something is done prior to that variance being granted, it still has to meet the test in an after the fact scenario where you come and you ask for approval, which is at a variance or different from what the code requires. You still have to meet the same test in order for this board to approve it. It's no different if you ask for approval before. The test is the same, even if you've already done it. And it creates an additional complication of encouraging people, even though I know you did not do this. But if the board were to forgive every property owner that comes before the board with an after the fact variance and says, well, if I had only known, I would have complied, but now that I've done the work and now that I've spent the money, it's a hardship. We can't consider that to be a hardship, because if we did, every time that somebody did something outside of the code requirements and came in and begged for forgiveness rather than permission, it would set a standard that would be really unsustainable in the city, because you'd have violators intending to violate, even though I know that's not what you've done here. So I really don't like to be in this position. I don't like it for you. I don't like it for the board, but we have to, do what our duty is as board members. So you all have any comments, questions, discussion, ready to make a motion?
I'll just add a quick comment. I tend to, I agree with your comments as far as our obligation to adhere to the ordinance. And I strongly encourage the owner and applicant to reach out to their contractor who did the work. I'm prepared to make a motion to deny the variance.
There's a second. Mr. Grass seconds the motion.
But I'll also share with you to go back to your contractor. He has a duty to get permits. He has a duty to know the ordinances.
Okay, so we got a motion pending. Mr. Bennett has made the motion. Ms. Grass has seconded the motion. This motion is to deny the variance. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. And sorry, Mr. Tompo, but the motion for the variance to be granted is denied. So the variance is denied. I do encourage you to get in touch with your contractor to see if they can remedy this situation for you. And hopefully they can do the work without charging you additional money when they've done it outside of compliance. Okay, thank you once again. Apologies to you. All right, next item on our agenda, B4, 18 Elizabeth Street, Borough, PMS number 459-13-03-071. Come on.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Council District number 4, Zone DR1F, requesting a special exception under section 54-110 to allow a rear one-story porch addition that extends a non-conforming 7.5-foot south side setback and extends a non-conforming 10.5-foot total side setback. 9 feet and 15 feet are required. The owners are Julia Armstrong and Ken Marcoon. The applicant is Julia F. Martin Architects. Mr. Batchelder. Ms.
So.
McQuarrie.
We filling in for
Okay.
this one. So this is a single family home in the Backborough neighborhood. They are before you today for a single story porch addition that extends a non-conforming side setback and total side setback. So the application is here along with their description of the request. We've got some pictures of the existing conditions, some surrounding images. This is the front, sides, and rear of the property, and some old photos and Sanborn maps. This site plan shows the proposed addition. It's right back here. A bit of a clearer one on the next screen. So it is conforming on the 3-foot north side, but it does encroach slightly into the south side setback, approximately 7.5 feet instead of 9. And then it's also not meeting the required 15 feet total combined side setback. It's compliant with the occupancy and the rear. So it is just this highlighted blue encroachment. And here is a floor plan showing the covered porch. Floor, roof. A rendering of the improvements to the home. And then you can see the addition, it's right down here. And this side. And since it is a relatively small and reasonable encroachment, the city recommends approval of this application.
All right, thank you, Ms. McQuarrie. Do we have anyone here in opposition to the application for 18 Elizabeth Street? We're in opposition. Okay. Seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owner or applicant here? All right, anything you'd like to say to the board? Ms. Martin. All right, does anybody have any questions for the applicant or for the city, for Emma? All right, Ms. Grass moves to approve. Is there a second? Ms. Richards seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously and the special exception for 18 Elizabeth Street is granted. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda, B5, 948 Rutledge Avenue, North Central, TMS number 463-08-01-057, Council District 4. Zoned SR2, requesting a special exception under section 54-501 to allow construction of a single-family residence with an accessory dwelling unit, ADU, on a lot of insufficient size. Lot size is 4153 square feet, 6,000 square feet are required. Requesting a variance from section 54-301 to allow construction of a single-family residence and accessory dwelling unit, ADU, with a 5-foot north side setback, a 16.7-foot total side setback, 9 feet and 18 feet are required. The owner is Harold Swinton et al. The applicant is Generation Homes, Inc. Andy Barber. Mr. Batchel.
This is a vacant lot in North Central. And you can see it here on the zoning map. It is a lot that is nearly the exact size of the surrounding lots in that area, many of the surrounding lots in that area. And was originally platted this way as a single family lot. And unlike lower portions of the peninsula, this area was constructed, platted, and constructed with city zoning regulations in place, but they've changed. And so now the regulations say this lot size is not conforming when it was originally approved by the city. So I think it's regarding the special exception for a lot of insufficient size, it's clearly a lot that was intended to have a single family home. So I've seen no problem with approving a plan for that. And then the plans, here's a view of that lot. And I think the side property line, I believe it follows roughly this line right here. So it doesn't go all the way up to the house on the north side. And application is filed. The original plans that they submitted in the spring had the parking in the front and the house was pushed back. And this lot, because it fronts on Rutledge Avenue, means that the house design has to go through the BAR. And so they were advised that the parking really needed to be in the back and the house should be shifted forward. So they've done that and redesigned the house. And the front setback of the house matches the neighboring property. So that's good. So they've got plenty of room for parking. They are encroaching on this north side property line setback, supposed to be 9 feet. It will be 5 feet with this design. And that's consistent. If you look back at this map, you see homes typically are sited very close to one or both property lines. And the house just to the south, for instance, which is owned by the applicants, is located adjacent to the property line, practically adjacent to the property line there. So what they're proposing with this design is consistent with what you find in other lots in the neighborhood. And so more images, these are the plans. It's a 2-story house. The accessory dwelling unit is proposed for the 2nd floor. That's allowed by the zoning of the property and has to meet certain conditions and don't have to follow through and meet all those conditions. But in the plans that they've submitted here satisfies those requirements. And this is the design they're proposing. And this is another image just showing the house. Oh, this is what they originally submitted, I think, or maybe because they pulled the house up and put more parking in the back since this. And then they've got a lot of support on neighbors. And so these are letters of support. So we think that this meets the variance test for 5-foot north side setback and special exception for new home on a lot of insufficient size, and we recommend approval.
All right, thank you, Lee. Do we have anybody who is here in opposition to the application for 948 Rutledge Avenue? Anybody here in opposition? All right, seeing none in opposition, do we have the owner or applicant here? All right, anything you'd like to say to the board this evening?
No, not yet. Here for questions.
All right. Fair enough. Any questions for Lee? Questions for the applicant?
I think it's a great design. I really do appreciate pulling it to the front because that's the new scape. We want the streets to look great. It gives a peel right there. And in that area, we've got we've got an eclectic mix of styles and types. I think that's gonna fit great.
All right.
With that being said, I'm
Somebody's
moving
gonna
for
make a
approval.
motion. All right, Mr. Goodwin moves to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Right, Mr. Bennett seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion for motion to approve is unanimously granted, and so the special exception and the variance for 948 Rutledge Avenue are approved. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda. B6, 51A Gadsden Street. Charleston Village, TMS number 457-02-04-007, Council District 8, zoned STR. Requesting a variance after the fact from section 54-353 to allow a detached accessory building storage shed with a 26-foot 8-inch front setback and 8-inch side street setback. Ordinance requires that any accessory building must be located to the rear of the principal building a minimum of 10 feet, and when the side lot line is a street line, the side setback adjacent to such street shall be at least 10 feet. The owners are Keith and Diane Fletcher. The applicant is Keith Fletcher. Mr. Batchelder.
This is a residential property in Charleston Village on the corner of Gadsden and Bull. And it's one unit of a pair of townhouse units that are separated by lot lines. And there are 3 of these buildings in a row right here, and the parking is provided in the back, as you'll see. And so the I don't know how we found out about this, but anyway, we found out. So before the board seeking the after the fact approval for the shed that's already there. And so this is a site plan. The front yard, the Gadsden Street side of the property is at the bottom of the image here. And then you've got the house right here. And you've got the driveway that provides access for the parking for those units right here. And the one parking space for this property right back here. So there is no other spot to put this little storage building on the property that would meet setback requirements. So they don't have an option in that regard. And I think what they've done here is actually a nice creative solution to that issue, because of course you got things that you want to store, garden equipment, bicycles, things like that. You don't have any other place to put that in the house other than in a storage shed like this. So so they made their application and made the explanation, included images, and I'll get to the final image, which is I think the best. So this is the unit itself right here. And lots of signatures of support. I don't know if I have any more. Oh yeah, this is the image I wanted to get to. So this is the storage building right here, just inside the fence, wraps around the side yard. And so it requires these variances to meet zoning requirements. And I think, again, I don't see any other real option for them to put a shed, small shed on the property that would meet zoning requirements. It does have to go through the BAR, but I think the way they've finished it off, it is pretty blends in, nondescript, doesn't stand out too much. So I think they have a case for a variance, and I recommend approval.
All right, thank you, Lee. Is there anybody here in opposition to the application for 51A Gadsden Street? All right, nobody's in opposition. Do we have the owner applicant here?
Yes, sir.
All right, anything you'd like to say to the board?
No, sir.
All right. Any questions for the owner? Any questions for the city?
Make a motion for approval.
All right, Mr. McKay moves to approve. Any discussion?
I was actually just curious how tall it was. I don't know if you. You need to answer that question. I don't know if it's gonna change my answer. I just. Didn't see it listed.
Perhaps,
Maybe y'all can answer that question.
The eve height is 7'6".
And if this had been not after the fact, would it have come to us and then to BAR as well? It would have been the
Right.
same.
right, same. Oh, yeah. So,
Quality is well done and is very appealing. We got a motion.
Yep, we got a motion pending.
Oh, s-
Well, we need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Goodwin is going to second the motion. Any further discussion? Good to vote? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The ayes have it unanimously, and the variance for 51A Gadsden Street is granted. Thank y'all. All right, the next item on our agenda, B7, 208 Rutledge Avenue, Cannonboro, Elliotsboro, TMS number 460-15-02-078, Council District 6, zoned LB, requesting a special exception under section 54-511 to allow a mixed-use development ground floor restaurant use with 1,400 square feet of indoor patron use area, 930 square feet of outside patron use area with 2 residential units, second floor, providing 9 off-street parking spaces. 26 spaces are required. 3 parking spaces are grandfathered for office and residential use. The owner is Green Monster Properties LLC. The applicant is Simmons Young. Mr. Batchelor.
208 Rutledge Avenue is a corner store building. And it sits on the corner of Cannon Street and Rutledge Avenue. And as you can see from the zoning map here, it's part of a commercially zoned area along Cannon Street. So it has a limited business zoning. And here's an aerial image. So this corner area right here was kind of redeveloped. I think it was kind of in poor shape and people came along and invested in the property and fixed it up and turned it into office space back in the maybe late 70s. And it's been office space since then, primarily office space. And they have this parking lot where they have parking for all these buildings and that includes spaces for 208 Rutledge as well. And so they would like to kind of return it back to what it once was, which is more of a neighborhood commercial use as opposed to office, kind of an interior facing office space for that goes with the rest of the property there. And so here's the current image of the building and the history of it. This is an article from back in 1979. And you can see the storefront store windows right there on the corner. And the changes that have occurred over time. More images of what it used to look like. And images from today. So what they would like to do is convert the ground floor, and currently the building is primarily office. It's office on the ground floor. And then there's 2 residential units upstairs, but one has been used as office space and it's occupied by MUSC. And then there's another residential unit up on the second floor. So they would like to convert that from that use to ground floor restaurant use. And that requires more off-street parking. So that's what bring this brings us to you today. They would like to have the 1,400 square feet of indoor patron area and 930 square feet of outside patron area for the restaurant. And so there's a parking shortfall, and the only way they can be approved for that use is with a special exception to not meet those parking requirements. Again, not unusual for that neighborhood because there's a lot of commercial uses, a lot of restaurants now along Cannon and Spring, and they don't provide all the required off-street parking. So what is being proposed here is really consistent with that neighborhood. And these are just more images of other precedents in the neighborhood where you have the corner stores and corner restaurant spaces. And site plan. This is just illustrating the 5. This is the kitchen back of house area. And then you see the indoor patron area and the outdoor patron area works well right in this little courtyard right here. And then the parking spaces are over here, I guess maybe over here as well. So anyway, that's the application. The applicants have presented this to the Cannonboro, Elliottboro Neighborhood Association. And they have given their endorsement and the letter. Lots of images showing what it looked like storefront being restored. But lots of support from folks in the neighborhood, as well as the neighborhood association. So we think this is a great thing for this building, and we recommend approval.
All right, thank you, Lee. Do we have anybody here in opposition to the application for 208 Rutledge Avenue? Anybody in opposition? All right, seeing no one, we have the owner and applicant here. Anybody like to say the board or any issue? Okay. All right. Yes, Ms. Grass has a question.
Mr. Batchelder, this property and the parking associated with it does not have anything to do with that other application that came before us for the development adjacent to it on Cannon that you access by that side street?
Oh, you're talking about, no, that's a separate
Okay,
property.
so it's not the same, they're not sharing that parking?
No, I don't
That was
believe
for
so.
parking, a special exception.
This is the area where the new building is being constructed right now.
Mhm.
And I don't know exactly what the arrangements are, but I don't believe there's any shared parking.
Is that by private club?
I don't remember.
No,
It's
it's
been a while since it came
It's a
before.
2 or 3 story building, right? It's being built
The other one, yes.
on Cannon Street.
Then that doesn't have any effect on your parking. Thank you.
If you're, sorry, if you're done.
Mhm.
I'm curious, I just want to understand because I didn't quite get the 3 parking spaces. So there are 12 total provider, or there's 3 that are dedicated to the residential, and then the 9 would be for the restaurant.
Well, there are 9 spaces that they provide that they have access to in that shared parking lot. And there are 14 spaces short of meeting their requirement once you factor in the 3 grandfather spaces.
Got it. Okay. I think that was the number I was trying to get my head around. So what was the shortage? Okay,
Any other questions?
that's it.
Other discussion?
I'll move for approval.
Bennett moves to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, Ms. Richards seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously, and the special exception for 208 Rutledge Avenue is granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda, B8 68 St. Margaret Street, Wagner Terrace, TMS number 463-11-04-019. Council District 6, zoned SR2, requesting a special exception under section 54-110 to allow a vertical extension, second-story bedroom office to a non-conforming building footprint having a 4.5-foot east side setback, 9 feet are required. The owners are John and Elizabeth Powell. The applicant is Barbara Looney. Mr. Batchelder.
Okay, residential property in Wagner Terrace. See it here on the zoning map. And the addition will be a second floor addition over this part of the house. And this is the part that encroaches into the side setback and requires a special exception. So it's a side setback, special exception for vertical addition on this house and along this east side property line. So here's the current house, 1-story house or 1.5 story. And plans show this is where they are proposing to go up. It's right here. And this is this gray area is what requires the special exception for that vertical, that second floor addition. There's a blow up of that. And floor plans. So this is the existing home. And looking at this from the east side of the house, you see this 1-story porch on the back. And then 1.5 story gable. And now the proposed, so again, this is the side where the special exception is being requested, but that 1-story porch is now a full 2-story section plus the extension of that second floor into the gable. And from the rear, it looks like this. So this is basically all that's being added right. The Wagner Terrace Neighborhood Association reviewed this and says they're fine with it, but they have mentioned the neighbors next door, wanting to make sure that they're okay with it. We don't know of any objections to this from any neighbors. And I think the applicant has tried to reach out to the neighbor to the east of this property and has not had success in contacting them. Yeah, they submitted we did speak to both the east neighbors, ones affected by the setback, the Atwoods, and the west neighbors, the Singletons, again, over the weekend, both were verbal support. So that's what the applicant provided in an email. And we haven't received any objections from anybody about this. So our recommendation is for approval. We think it meets the special exception requirements for the vertical addition to the house.
Okay. Is there anybody, thanks, Lee. Is there anybody here in opposition to the application for 68 St. Margaret Street? You're in opposition. Seeing no one. Do we have the owners or applicant? All right. And Barbara, hi Barbara. Anything you'd like to address with the board?
I think.
Question from Ms. Grass.
Does this letter or the email that you received, does it cover the neighborhood association's concern? Is that the resident that they were concerned about?
Well, I think they mentioned something about the neighbor to the rear. But that neighbor is not impacted. There's no setback variance being requested off the rear property line. So
So the most impacted have given their verbal support.
is this 2-story house right here?
Okay.
Sorry. Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Does the design have to be approved by the architect?
No, the design does not, but they'll have to go to the board, I think, for the changes to the existing roof. But not the addition.
And there's nothing visible from the street with this addition, right?
Well, not from the front. It's hidden, it seems to be hidden behind the gable. I mean, if you saw it from the side, you'd see the addition, but not from directly in front of the house. I don't think. This is the image after street.
That's after.
Yeah, so there's no change for the front elevation because this does not, the height of the addition does not exceed the height of the existing gables. The peak of the roof.
And the actual, do you have to go back to the actual front picture?
I mean, this is.
Do you have a live picture of the front? Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a couple right there. Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay. And your recommendation was?
for approval.
It doesn't appear to. It looks like you can't see it from the street. It's a reasonable minimal request. I would make a motion to approve.
All right, Mr. Goodwin moves to approve. Any further discussion? Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, Mr. Bennett is going to second the motion. The motion to approve the variance, motion to approve the special exception for 68 St. Margaret Street is on the table. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously. And the special exception for 68 St. Margaret Street is granted. Thank you. All right, the final item on our agenda for this evening is B9-1716 Wapner Drive, Pinecrest Gardens, EMS number 351-12-00-222, Council District 7, Zone SR2, requesting a variance from section 54-301 to allow construction of a single-family residence with a 10-foot rear setback, 25 feet are required. The owner applicant is Benjamin Stein. Mr. Batchel.
So this is a vacant lot in West Ashland in Pinecrest Gardens, shown here on the zoning map. And this lot has two large grand trees on it, which impact how you build a home on it. And get to that in just a minute, but here's an aerial view. And here's a street view. So the grand tree closest to the street is quite large, as you can see. And then there's one back here, further back on the lot, that is not so large, but it's still grand. And application materials. So here's the site plan. Let me get back to this. So on the right is the blown up version of this left image. But at the front, you see this very large 112 diameter live oak. And then in the back, there's a grand tree right here, 35-inch live oak. And I believe the applicant, I don't believe the applicant's gone to the Board of Zoning Appeals site design to seek the approval for the removal of that tree yet, but I think they're on the agenda to go soon. And that tree, I don't think is in quite the same health as the tree in front. But in order to accommodate the large tree up front and stay out of the protective zone around that tree, they are proposing to shift the house back on the lot. And it's a square footprint shown here, and would have a 10-foot rear setback versus the 25 feet rear setback that's required by the city zoning ordinance. Now, one thing, I'll go back to the map here, the zoning map. So the light yellow indicates the properties in the city. They're zoned SR1 or SR2. And those zoning districts have a 25-foot rear setback requirement for a home. The darker, I guess that gold color, that indicates properties that are not in the city, and in fact they're in under the jurisdiction of Charleston County, and the Charleston County zoning ordinance, and their zoning district is R4. That's the comparable single-family zoning district in the county, but their setbacks are different. They have a 10-foot rear setback for homes, not 25 feet. And then this property right here is commercially zoned property, and it's in the county, but it touches one small corner at the back of the subject property. And so back to the plans that they're proposing. So square footprint right here and 10-foot rear setback. And information that they've submitted about that, about the trees. This is from a inspection of the trees. And this is information the applicant provided, but so they've indicated that the setback for this home, this nearby home at 1724 Wapu Drive, is about 4 feet. So that home is, and I think that may have been a home that was constructed years ago, but it's very close to the rear property line. And more information. This shows all the properties in that area that are under the county's jurisdiction, and colors, gold and red. And this is information from the Charleston County zoning ordinance on their setback requirements, just noting that its rear setback is 10 feet right there for the R4 district. And I think this is the last slide. So I think the tree does present hardship in trying to work around the tree. It's my understanding that there may be concerns about drainage from the neighbors around this lot, but I don't know if there have been further conversations between the applicant and the neighbors about that. But I think the tree and trying to work around the tree means that you've got a hardship. And so shifting the house back on the lot seems to make sense. And depending on what kind of concerns the board hears tonight, I can talk more about that, but it seems like a reasonable request given the R4 zoning that applies to so many other lots in that area has a 10-foot rear setback, and this proposed house is meeting that 10-foot rear setback. And that the grand tree at the front of the property, that very large grand tree, is impacting the buildable area of the lot to a great extent. So I would recommend for approval, and we'll hear from anybody that has any concerns about this. We can talk further about that.
Okay, and Lee, just what you may have touched on this, but before we get into the comment, how did it come to be that there are multiple governing jurisdictions over this neighborhood?
Well, the city of Charleston has been annexing west of the Ashley River since 1960. And depending on the period of time, there have been substantial annexation and growth of the city boundaries over there in the 60s and the 80s and 90s, and then more piecemeal since then. But we've ended up with in some neighborhoods with this very piecemeal approach where some properties are in the city and some are in the county still.
Even on the same block, even next door neighbors?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. James Island and this area, West Ashley. Many neighborhoods in West Ashley are completely in the city. But then there are some neighborhoods that never fully annexed into the city, and that's been piecemeal. So If somebody,
Blue cans and green cans.
Yep.
When you drive down the road, that's the only way you can tell
Yeah.
sometimes.
All right, do we have anybody in opposition to the application for 1716 Wapu Drive? All right, we're gonna come back to you first. We're gonna hear from the owner or applicant. He is here.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Come up.
Please.
Very much. Been seeing, getting, I have a lot to touch on. I tend to ramble, so please feel free to just cut me off, or if something's not pertinent and you want me to move on, certainly, but just let me know. This process started in 2021 when I began reaching out to zoning, planning, Eric Schultz, and all them to go ahead and start kicking around the idea of getting a site visit, right? Can y'all come out? Let's look at the trees. Let's talk about the best place to maybe propose a home. That went on for over a year. I never could get anyone out there. So the plan of attack was, well, let's just put together a bill permit and throw the darn board. We did that a few months back. And after that, zoning and planning got back with their responses and what the steps would be. So what I'm getting at is these efforts have started and gone on for quite a while. And I've been very adamant and peacefully working with zoning and planning on the best course to do this. So what we came up with is probably, it's preferable, as he stated, to that big tree is not going anywhere. The best place for a home would be the back right corner of that lot. The first, as of now, we're at $4,000 or $5,000 invested in survey work and build plans. Remember, I asked to have site visits, never responded, because I think what the issue is somehow the owner that I bought this from in 2017, somebody at the city of Charleston allowed this subdivision to occur. I've not been able to get any insight as to who that signature is on there. If you go to the actual recorded plat, everyone kind of just says, I don't know who that was or what was going on at that time, but this should not have really been approved, especially as a single family residential lot, when it's so clear that these trees are the way they are. Knowing that it was zoned single family, knowing that the subdivision occurred, I gladly purchased the lot in coordination with the house at 1720 Walker next door. So that's the background. And, like I said, $4,000 or $5,000 later, we've just been shot, we were shot down, but given a path forward, we decided this is the best approach. That proposed residence is not the building footprint. All I'm doing is we're just trying to establish a buildable, what's the buildable area? We want, the footprint would be way smaller. Okay, that proposal goes, as you notice, from the back of the front tree TPZ to the back proposed 10-foot setback. And it exercises the complete side setback. I'm just trying to say, this is the square area we want to build, because we would really like to keep that tree as well. If we wouldn't mind letting the other oak stay, but it's in poor health. And again, the zoning plan has advised me that this is the best course of action to pick. So we're not trying to build a behemoth there. This would be a 1,500 square foot home. If we don't get, where we want, I might propose affordable housing or something and see if they'd be able to help me get through these types of processes as well. But I just want to make that clear. And so we had no knowledge of I guess there's a drainage easement. I don't know, in the back that's not recorded on that recorded plat that we have. We also I have no intention of, I guess, the runoff. I would have been more detailed with the surveyors had I known these arrows with their, I think that just shows, water will go away from the pad. There was no intention of water going anywhere. I have built homes in Charleston County and City of Charleston before, and I know this is just step one and many, many steps that are to come. Next we got the tree, then we got to get through all the checklists, most importantly, stormwater, right? So they have to sign off on this. There's a lot of engineering and a lot of money that's going to be invested to make sure water's not going on any neighboring properties. So that is certainly not my, I don't know, none of us can afford for that. I don't want to be sued. The city wouldn't want to be sued by allowing that and all this. And so, there's no intentions there. There's no harm. just trying to make use of the land I purchased as a single family residence lot. After that, I guess. Yeah, so we're just trying to just move the ball forward. This is again, just a little, this first part, I don't know really what else to do, but this kind of confused really the formation of the lot in the first place, because this previous owner, this was all one lot. And then he had this subdivide made and then sold it. So I thought I had some more, but I guess I forgot what I was going to add there. But again, I'm just trying to work with everybody. And I've been working on zoning and planning. I'm willing to do whatever. In all honesty, this could actually benefit neighbors after the requirements that might be set forth for runoff. So that's, I think it.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. You'll have an opportunity to come back and respond.
Cool.
So if you think of things that you
Yeah.
had in your mind to say and they pop in there again, you're
Awesome. Thank you.
welcome to return. All right, so we'll hear from the folks in opposition. One at a time, just please come up to the podium.
Hi, I'm Diane Seymour. I live at 1712 Block 2. I have severe concerns about flooding. I don't know if you received the email that was sent, pictures of the flooding in my yard.
Yes, that was part of the public information packet that went.
And there has been extensive foundation work done in my home. And with the way that the house is gonna sit, either 10 feet from Neil's house or 9 feet from my house, depending on where how the roof's gonna be pitched. I've seen it in the neighborhood. Somebody's gonna get in front of the water, and also adding more impervious surface right around me is going to only exacerbate my problem that I have right now. That's my main concern. I'm also concerned that the trees that they take down that are so close to my house have roots under the foundation that was already replaced. It will present another problem. And I also don't like the fact that in either scenario, a grand tree is going to be removed. But flooding is a huge concern of mine. If the flooding gets any greater, it's going to breach my home. It's already done a lot of damage.
Thank you, Ms. Seymour. All right, anybody else speaking opposition?
My name's Neil Peinert. I live in Immature Hall, on the backside of the property. And same thing with the flooding. My backyard floods. Y'all got the video with the water getting pumped out. My garage flooded twice last year. And right now, that property does absorb water. So I'm concerned when the pad's put down, that it's just gonna flow further out. The other thing is his flat, and he admitted, so I talked with Mr. Steen yesterday, doesn't show the drainage easement, which may or may not be an issue, but there is a 6-foot drainage easement on each side of that property line. So he's gonna actually end up building within 4 feet of the easement, which may not be a concern because whatever, but I wouldn't want somebody to have to come dig up back and leave 4 feet of dirt between my foundation and a busted pipe or whatever. The other thing is I have a friend that's a surveyor. He looked at it, and a former planning department guy from the county that works for Gel Engineering looked at it, and they both said, according to the drawing that's there now, I will have an issue with runoff. Once again, none of us want issues with drainage, so that is my biggest concern. I mean, if it can be addressed, fine, but I just don't know if it can be addressed based on the drawings and everything that he presented. So that's why I oppose the variance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Connor. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Drea Walters. I'm a neighbor of the two property owners, and I just wanted to speak in opposition. I do feel for the owner quite a bit. That neighborhood has seen developers coming in, trying to purchase these lots that are open, quote unquote, throughout the neighborhood. We had David Werner come in several years ago and build 2 houses, clear cut the entire lot, built them. There's obvious runoff issues. That's only half a block up from this property. I can see where Diane's property is flooded multiple times. That lot, what I don't think you see on the pictures is how far it slopes over towards her property. And while the plan that he submitted does have this, you know, house, small setback, very close to the property lines on either side, but you don't see all of the vegetation that would have to be removed in order to do this. Those 2 grand trees are not the only mature trees on that property. There's quite a bit of other vegetation, and it's also not taking into account any sort of driveway. Even if it's permeable, you're still, going to wind up with drainage and easement issues throughout that. So I do feel for him that the property probably should never have been subdivided due to the location. Part of the other drainage issues we experience in the neighborhood are because, as you said, we are very piecemeal. We have city, county, and state roads throughout there. Across the street from these properties, there's a very large drainage ditch. I believe that one is owned by South Carolina DOT. Occasionally they'll come out and clean it, but for the most part, we struggle to get any sort of help from any of the entities because it's always passing the buck from one person to the other. So that can cause quite a bit of struggle with our properties throughout the neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Williams. Anybody else in opposition to the application? All right, Mr. Steen, you can respond.
I think that it's hard, okay, as I stated, I started this process in 2021. One of the objections from one of the neighbors, their home was purchased in July of 2022. We spoke yesterday, the conversation was, well, good, but it was very clear that there is some frustration in that purchase process that happened, that maybe the sellers didn't disclose some issues she's had with flooding and whatnot. So I think it's extremely understandable, but I think it's hard to not be objective, to not lacking objectivity because of some other issues that really have nothing to do with me. I feel everyone's concerned, but I also, nobody's got any, these are issues going on and all of a sudden it just focuses on me. I mean, because I want to exercise my right to, try to do something with this lot and develop this lot. Nobody has any engineering, nobody has any survey work, nobody has anything showing that. We're just saying that we know this and that, and the water goes this way, we know this and that. It's just, there's no science behind that. And it's almost, I find it, if they were more familiar with the build process, I think they would understand that it's almost insulting to the city who's going to be issuing the permit to say that if y'all knew, like, there's just no way a permit's going to get issued that's going to result in water going on your property. It's just not going to happen. If it does, you guys get the opportunity to sue me and sue the city. There's so many checks and balances in place now for this stormwater management stuff. It's off the charts. It's crazy. So this again might end up benefiting you guys. I would advise that, like, I think it would be helpful if we work together and you could see that, maybe do more research on what it takes to get a building permit and what stormwater department requires to do that. Okay. Secondly, it's, the issues with the drainage, I find it, I mean, how much effort has been put into dealing with this so far? I asked one of the people yesterday, I said, have you had, contractors, engineers come over and work on, fixing this issue for your house? They didn't have the money to do it or whatever, that's fine, but that's not my problem. And so I also find it hard, it's just, to say that, like, already this lot that's never had a property on it is running off onto there. It's like, I personally believe, like, it's just as low lying, if not more than one of the objectors' property. So, and hers sits below the street. So there's just no basis for any of it, except there's frustration on all of our parts. We live in Charleston. You know, stormwater management is an issue. It's the hottest button issue we have right now, right? And so, to think that this is just gonna go along and just be harmful to them, I think it's just not valid. So there's that, and then also, so the tree coverage and all the overgrowth is out of control. I mean, 2 months ago, I went over to her house, went to your house next door, and I said, are you aware that trees and shrubs and stuff, vines from my property are growing on your power lines where they meet your house? You cannot see where the power lines meet her house. It's dangerous. It's a fire hazard. I said, if you would like, I can come over and cut that for you. You should have somebody do that. It's dangerous. And she agreed. But then at the same time, I asked if I would be interested in selling the lot. So I understand probably to protect her interest, but the overgrowth is so out of control. And just so you're aware, I can cut any of those trees except for those two. I can go out there, those pine trees that are pine trees with a giant taproot. Wait till another hurricane like Hugo comes, that thing is gonna snap and it'll be shrapnel. So there's many ways we can skin this cat, like the pine trees, giant taproot, they always snap. If you ever have seen after a hurricane, right? The oak trees fall over because they have a fibrous root system, right? So sure, they absorb water, but I'm just telling you that like at this point, I can still clear the lot as much as I want. And I wouldn't do that. I'm just saying like, this could benefit you ultimately. I'm not looking to harm you guys. I'm looking to help. And I have a lot of knowledge of this stuff. And I also know that like, I'm forking out the money to ensure that kind of we all benefit. So I understand your concerns and frustrations, but I just don't know how much of it's valid at this point because it's not based on any facts or any science. I'm the only one that's presenting anything and spending any money on any of this. So I think I have a valid right to at least go to the next step. You
Okay,
guys will have to-
I think we understand your position, Mr. Steen. Thank you. We appreciate it. All right, Lee, any questions for?
I have one. I'm curious, what's the city's take on the drainage easement? It sounds like there's some dispute as to whether that's whether that's actually recorded or not.
Yeah, I'd have to research that a little bit with our stormwater staff.
Okay.
I did see that it was noted on our GIS system. And there was a book and page reference to or a document that was recorded apparently for it. But I don't know the status of it, so I'd have to research that a little bit.
Well, I'm thinking you don't know the answer because I'm sort of curious what the nature of it is, right? If it's an easement to provide access so that they can clear out drains or what? You know, I feel like that plays into the stormwater.
Doesn't sound, and maybe
I
neighbors.
can answer some of that. The property that I lived in, it's the house I grew up in, my dad built it. There used to be a ditch back there and a ditch along the side of our house. It's now pipe. And in the corner of John Durst, there's a big drain right there, like 4 foot, big concrete drain. So the easement goes right down that area.
So which way does that flow through the pipe towards
Well,
to the east?
the county owns that part. Last time I saw them clean it was probably right after Hugo. So, and I've requested before and nobody's come out. There was actually a guy from the county there because the bread stores actually are, John Durst, they're doing some kind of soil test right now. They just notified all the neighbors. There was a guy from the county out there and I asked him about the drain. And he said, I don't know what to tell you. So we do have flooding issues. I am familiar with the building process. I've built 2 houses myself. I also work for the town of Kiowa. I sat through a BZA meeting yesterday, dealing with the same type of drainage issues and everything. And the pads do, I mean, I understand his dilemma. I agree with him. I don't think the city should have ever allowed them to split that lot. It doesn't make sense because those grand trees were there when they split it. They split it in what, 2018, I think it was. So it's just a huge mess. And I've said, if you lived in our property, I can't walk in my backyard during a major storm without going into ankle deep water.
Yeah, I have water.
Hers is.
I have water kissing my wood
Yeah.
floor, and I did get sump pumps. So my solution is the water comes in, destroys everything, destroys the dehumidifier and everything under my house, and then I pump it out. That's the only solution, and I did pay $8,000 for that, so I did put some money into it. Short of moving my home and putting it somewhere else, it's gonna end up like other places in West Ashley where homes are inhabitable.
And I don't think his property is causing that now. I'm saying when there's an impermeable pad and drainage coming off. of the
We
roof of the
understand
house.
the development of that lot. We get it.
I have one
Well-
question, maybe for Mr. Steen. You mentioned that you've been spending a little bit of time, some effort on this, and somebody mentioned general engineering laboratories, site and civil organ. I don't know if have you consulted with site and civil that's gonna be required for this development?
It's not, I mean, there's not even gonna be, that's not gonna be required. I mean, stormwater will have their own checks, but this is not a flood zone. I've never had any, I didn't know there was any flooding occurring until this has come up. So, that'll be I'm gonna be following the city's requirements to build, and as that comes up, then certainly, but, you know, at this point, it's just been survey work and have plans, and, I forgot to comment that the driveway stuff is not correct. They're not, we've already worked out a driveway, so they're not letting me put in a driveway. There's already an existing driveway here. You can see shared easement, that this is cement right here. This is the home, this is the lot. This is the only thing will be allowed. It's already is poured over that root system, and they don't want to see any more. It's not gonna happen. We're not allowed to. We're not gonna. The most we're talking about here is it's gonna be a 20-foot by, you know, 40 feet, whatever deep. So I'm just saying that I think it's a lot of speculation to think that what I might come in here and do will not actually help. That lot's gonna be cleaned up. It's covered with azaleas and garbage and sheds. I don't even know, these are shrapnel too. I don't know where the city didn't even seem to know about them, but I think what he's saying, this drain he's talking about is about right here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's right in the
Are you
corner
the
where-
property that abuts?
where it's right in that corner where our properties meet and the bakery.
Are you this one?
Okay, I would encourage y'all to have these conversations offline instead of in the middle of a public meeting.
Yeah.
So we'll
I
go
would
ahead.
just reiterate, I'm
You
only
know-
asking for the setbacks that are consistent with his property and the other properties in the neighborhood.
I understand, and I encourage that dialogue, but just not during the public meeting.
Thank you, sorry.
I was gonna suggest maybe that we do defer it because I'd like to talk to the applicant and talk to my staff about the tree and see if maybe there's some give on the tree protection.
Yeah, and I'd like to know, as part of that conversation, I'd like to understand the setback. Does the drainage easement area affect the location of the setback under our ordinance?
It does not.
Okay, so no matter whether the drainage easement is there or not, the setback remains the same.
Correct.
Second of all, is this lot buildable with a 25-foot setback? If they were to comply with the city ordinance, can they build can Mr. Steen build something on that lot?
Yes, I think you could build something on that lot, meet the 25-foot rear setback.
Okay,
Wait,
just,
Without impacting the tree.
Yeah,
You know, the question is, what about the limbs?
Mhm.
And I don't know enough about what's going on the backside of the tree to understand that. And I haven't talked to any of my staff who might have been out there and looked at the tree, but
all right, the
so
city
that's
is,
something we could look into.
Lee, I think wisely is,
the tree protection zone, you can see it's for this tree is here. So right now, the buildable area is really this. So, this was the previous setback, but we're talking about maybe a tiny home or something right there, but.
right,
They didn't do I thought it was on one, but the tree, you know, this is the canopy, the TP, so somewhere like right here, there's not space for I guess any of those tiny home.
Bill,
I
you can build
also
that
have
TV show.
two very large green trees in my backyard that are practically kissing the fence, and the canopy goes over his property. And my concern is if there's development there, that will affect those trees as well.
Okay. All right, so we've heard, I think, a wise and sage recommendation from the city, from Lee, and I think this dialogue that's occurring between the neighbors here in this meeting is further support for the notion that it ought to be deferred. We'll come back to this if they can.
Can I ask one?
Yeah.
Thing too, Mr. Batchelder? Is it typical for them, for the applicant to come before us without any plans at all whatsoever?
No, that's not typical.
So can we? I mean, is that
Well,
something that we can hear it when there's something more developed? Because it seems like that would answer a lot of the questions as far as the runoff, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know. That's what I was asking.
Hold on, let Lee give the answer before you say anything.
If the board's inclined to do that, yes.
And Lee, also about the water, flow. Is there something that we can learn as to what exactly happened other than what we currently have?
Well, we had an application come through recently for that lot on Wentworth Street, 175.5 Wentworth Street, I think it was. And there was a neighbor concerned about drainage impacts on them, and so I did contact our stormwater engineers about that situation, and would there be anything that would happen in the course of reviewing the changes that were proposed in 175.5 that would trigger their regulations or something like that? And they said, no, not for a single family home. And they sent me information about the law and that applies in these situations. And it works both ways, because if there's already drainage occurring naturally over from one lot to another lot and somebody blocks that, then that can be a maybe a violation of the law. And vice versa, if you dump water over on somebody else's lot when it's not already happening that way, not going that way, then that can be a violation. But those are things that end up being civil matters, apparently, what I understood. So,
Okay. Go ahead.
but anyway, we can look into that a little bit more in light of the concerns that have been raised tonight.
All right, Mr. Steen, I'm gonna allow you one more quick comment. What you got?
So regarding her first question about that's what we had tried to do. We don't have any plans, and I spoke with Ms. Ashby about it, that we weren't gonna be submitting because we already tried that, and we don't know what dimensions we're able to work with right now, because we don't have we don't know the dimensions, so we can't build, we can't design a house because we don't know. We've already submitted plans and it didn't fall into a little space that would.
Okay. We understand. We got this. Thank you. All right.
I'll make a motion for deferral. To allow the applicant to further develop conversations with their neighbors, and so the city can address questions about the drainage.
Yeah. And I'll go ahead and make a comment during discussion before we have a second that part of the hardship test is the hardship test, the authorization of variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good. And so I do think it's important for the city to look into these stormwater drainage issues because it is germane to one of the elements of the hardship test in order to grant the variance. So I think would be wise for the city to do a little bit further investigation on those issues.
And I don't know if we can or not, but it'd be interesting to have an indication from Mr. Schultz about the removal of that tree, if it really does need to be removed.
Would this still go before site design,
Yes,
even independent of our decisions tonight?
yes.
Were y'all interested at all in having some kind of building plan so that they can possibly, it can address a lot of the issues as far as the runoff and like where the building's gonna be sited? I mean, I don't know, I would ask the city, I don't really know how to phrase that, but I think anyway.
I think that's a good comment. I think it's on point. And I think that it's something that in this interim period of time during the deferral, if it's granted, that's something that the city should explore with the applicant.
Okay. Should it be part of the motion? though,
I don't
what
think
you're
it has to
asking?
be. I think the
Okay.
message is clear to
Okay.
Lee and to the applicant.
That's what I was
that
trying to
that's-
ask. Okay,
But I
perfect.
appreciate it. That's the intensity of the use, which gets into the character of the neighborhood. So I appreciate it.
All right, so Mr. Bennett's made a motion to defer. Is there a second?
That's
Ms.
okay.
Grass seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion to defer is passes unanimously, and so now we're gonna ask the applicant to work further with the city and with the neighbors to see if there's some kind of solution that can be better defined. Thank you.